The episode proper begins with a black and white flashback sequence set 3 weeks before the disaster that wiped out the crew. Making this flashback sequence black and white makes it instantly distinct from the scene set 3 million years later. Obviously it's a flashback, we know this from some text that appears on the screen, but the black and white adds to the entire sequence. It gives it another layer. The sequence begins with a scene involving Rimmer, Lister and Captain Hollister in Hollister's office. It's great to see Mac McDonald back as Hollister. Because of Hollister's return, this scene does feel very Series 1-esque, in a good way. This is Captain Hollister's last appearance in Red Dwarf until Series 8, 11 years later. Mac McDonald is one of the highlights of the episode, especially given the few scenes he actually appears in. The opening scene is pretty funny, the situation being typical of Rimmer pre-disaster. Rimmer has brought Lister to Hollister to read off an offence which Lister committed. Lister snuck in some hallucinogenic mushrooms, which Rimmer ended up accidentally having. The scene we are left to imagine sounds pretty funny and entirely in line with Lister's character. Rimmer and Lister then head back to their quarters. As Lister leaves the room, Rimmer from the future pops his head through a table and speaks to the present-day Rimmer. Brief though it is quite funny and fits Red Dwarf's brand of humour perfectly. It then comes back to 3 million years later and the picture is restored to colour. The opening black and white flashback segment is just fantastic. It's funny, witty and, as if it needs saying, has great performances. It's certainly a different opening to a Red Dwarf episode to what audiences were used to, and this makes the episode all the more distinctive. In the present, well, not quite the present as such, but you know what I mean. Lister is reading out Rimmer's diary to the cat. The dialogue during the scene is quick and punchy. The writing is excellent. The episode only started less than 6 minutes ago and yet there is so much to talk about, but the pacing is almost electric. In Rimmer's diary, Lister finds a photograph of what appears to be him and Kochanski married. This then leads them to floor 16 where the Stasis leak is, which was written down in Rimmer's diary as that is what the future Rimmer told the past Rimmer. They then head down to floor 16, which involves a fairly amusing and interesting scene set inside the lift. The message that plays is quite funny. The lift also reminds the audience of how enormously large Red Dwarf is, that a lift journey of several minutes has to be taken to reach a far-off floor. They then enter the Stasis leak and end up on Red Dwarf, 3 million years ago. They enter a men's bathroom, which inevitably results in an easily amusing scene. The cat's total confusion and bewilderment is a highlight, especially when Lister and Rimmer try to explain to him what is going on. The dynamic between the three cast members is just fantastic. There is obvious on-screen chemistry and it meshes really well. They then head back through the Stasis leak when they realise they cannot physically bring anyone back without them turning into powdery dust. What follows is a scene involving Rimmer and Lister where they discuss the Stasis leak and whether or not they can actually bring anyone back. The scene itself is nothing to shout about especially, it does exactly what you'd expect it to do. It has some funny lines, but for the most part doesn't add much, until Lister figures out how to bring someone back, that is. Lister realises that if you were to persuade someone to go into suspended animation in a stasis booth, they'd survive the disaster. Lister wants to revive Kochanski in this way, while Rimmer wants to revive himself so that he never dies. This sets up a nice confrontation of sorts between the two characters. The cat and Lister soon head back through the Stasis leak. Rimmer has already gone ahead. The setup on Red Dwarf is just fantastic. Seeing old characters from Series 1 gives this episode a unique feel to it. Many of these characters will not appear again until Series 8, and some won't even appear again. In terms of matching up the continuity with Series 1 and the flashback segment from earlier, this episode works fantastically. Red Dwarf gets a lot of stick when it comes to its inconsistent approach to continuity, but it works from a comedic perspective. If Red Dwarf was a serious sci-fi drama, the plot holes and continuity errors would be a genuine problem. But yeah, the continuity works flawlessly here. The scene between past Rimmer and future Rimmer is fantastic. It's something Red Dwarf is good at, taking something that is impossible in our everyday lives and making it funny. Rimmer having a conversation with Rimmer has been shown before in episodes such as Me Squared, but here it's different and possibly better. Hollister then turns up dressed as a chicken. It's implied that Rimmer believes that he is hallucinating again and that Hollister in a chicken costume is another hallucination, just like how Rimmer thought his future self was a hologram, as a hologram was also an hallucination. Rimmer therefore doesn't really care and is generally unpleasant. This makes it funnier when you imagine what happens to Rimmer afterwards. Rimmer ends the scene by throwing what appears to be green paint at Hollister's face. The episode then cuts back to Lister and the cat's search for Kochanski, which soon takes them off Red Dwarf and to a hotel. Lister thinks that he is not the one who marries Kochanski as he finds out that she's already married. So just as he's about to leave with the cat, Kochanski appears in the doorway and invites them in. Lister then meets his future self from 5 years in the future who managed to find a way to get back through the Stasis leak. The dialogue between the two Listers is pretty good, though not as sharp as the dialogue between the two Rimmers. I have previously said in this very review, in fact, praised the level of continuity, and the future Lister does create another plot hole. Red Dwarf is funny when it comes to how it handles continuity, and a lot of it is understandably very tongue-in-cheek. The final scene of the episode brings us back to Red Dwarf, but still in the past. Rimmer enters and he's basically regarded as ill, most likely because he believed he hallucinated. Normal Rimmer, we'll call him that to avoid confusion, appears. Then Lister and the cat appear. Another version of Lister appears with a different version of Kachansky. Then another hologram Rimmer appears, sporting a mustache. In what is typically Red Dwarf, the episode ends before there can be any explanation. The final scene is just bonkers. It brings up all sorts of crazy new timelines that were obviously written into the script for a laugh. Not that I have a problem with that. If Red Dwarf was a sci-fi drama, these new timelines would have been taken seriously. Here, as a one-off joke, it works fantastically and fits Red Dwarf's USP very well. The sci-fi in Red Dwarf is just there to bend and twist the story to create as many clever and bizarre jokes as possible. So, that concludes Stasis Leak. It's great. Yeah, it's well written, funny, quick-witted, a fantastic use of the sci-fi genre. This is the first sci-fi heavy episode for a while and it works fantastically. It's a brilliant mix of humour and sci-fi which is key to the Red Dwarf formula. It is certainly up there as one of the best episodes of Series 2 so far. The next episode is Queeg.